Welcome back, everybody, to A Little Less Fear podcast. Today, I would like to introduce Sam Rafoss. She's the founder and CEO of Sober and Serene. She's a recovering wine addict, sobriety coach, speaker, and podcaster. Sam is passionate about sobriety, holistic health, spiritual growth, and self-mastery. As I am, we are perfectly in alignment. Welcome to A Little Less Fear podcast.
Thanks for having me, Lino.
A pleasure. So, Sam, tell us about your journey. What brought you to where you are at today?
Oh,
I know
wow.
it can be a loaded. I know that could be a loaded question, but I'm ready. I'm all ears.
Okay. Well, I'll start at let's start 20 years ago, but I'll take a few minutes to tell it. I won't take the 20-year story to tell it, but I was a social worker, so I've always been in the helping professions. I've loved being a helper my whole life. I seem to be called to do that. I wanted to stay home with my kids. I have 3 daughters, and they are now young adults, and when I stayed home with them and I wasn't doing social work anymore, and when I say doing social work, it was I worked in the foster care system, so I just didn't want to do that once I had my own kids, and I wanted to stay home. So I just started working part-time around my girl's schedule as a stay-at-home mom, and I ended up in the health and wellness field of nutrition. So I was a holistic nutrition professional. I had gone back to school in the evening while my girls were young, and I was building that business, and I was teaching nutrition. I was doing a few things along that line, and then other women or students would say to me, "Hey, you have a nutrition business. Can you help me?" Kind of like you seem to know what you're doing, and a lot of it for me is just usually trial and error. I'm like, oh, let's try something and see if it works. So I have had that entrepreneurial journey. So fast forward to 2019, 2020, and I had taken a break, not only because my mom was ill, but also because we know the pandemic was on, and I thought it was a good time to reassess my life. And so after all these years of being that healthy, not only healthy mom, but healthy business owner and healthy nutritionist, helping other people get healthy, I had to really address what I call my secret behind the scenes of me doing everything healthy, but yet behind the scenes, I was drinking a bottle or 2 of wine a night.
Oh, wow.
And when you're a functioning person, and I don't like labels, that's just me personally, so I don't like to say I was a functioning alcoholic, but for those of you that know how much alcohol that can be in one go round, I was just drinking a lot. And I decided early 2020 that I wanted to go 30 days. I'm going to go 30 days without wine. And Lino, I could barely make it 2 or 3 days, and I would be back on this roller coaster of, oh, it's okay. And I would tell myself those stories that I'm okay, and everything else is fine. And, I would justify it. Yeah. Because I was so committed to wine. And when I say committed, I mean, I used it to celebrate. I used it to drown my sorrows. I used it for everything. So it was this outside coping mechanism. And looking back, I believe that I had a lot of social anxiety that I didn't know, because I had used wine all the time in social situations.
Sam, how many years were you using? How many years were you using that as a? You said something that stuck out to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, how long were you drinking for? Drinking wine, like 2 bottles a day, about how many months,
let's say so when my girls were little, and we'll take it back there, because I always think, where did this start? So when the girls were little and I was with their dad, I would think, I probably didn't drink that much. I really didn't. You can imagine 3 little kids. I had my 3 daughters in 4 years.
Your hands were busy.
Like,
yeah.
I was busy.
Yeah.
So if you look at 2011, and this for me, again, looking back, I can see, oh, this is where the trigger started, because my whole identity is wrapped up in being the best mom I can be. I have 3 daughters, so I want to be the best role model I can be. And when their dad and I split up in 2011, as many divorced parents do, we had the pattern of the girls would be with me 1 week and him 1 week.
Okay.
So I look at it now and I think that's where it started. Because when the girls were with me, I was busy sun up till sundown with the kids.
Yeah.
And so I would just go to bed, and it's not like I never had a drink or anything. It was just I didn't really drink too much.
Mhm.
But if you look at that week where the girls went with their dad, I think that's where I just got really sad. I just got really sad. Like, even though I was happy that my girls could be with their father, because it was really important for us to still co-parent. But
Yeah.
looking back to that, that's where it started.
So you
So
kind of,
probably in 2011, 2012 is when it really crept up on me.
wow.
And I would binge. So the week the girls weren't with me, I would work a lot. And then I would either, stop at the local pub, because even though I'm an introvert and I like to be by myself, I didn't know how to go home to an empty house with no kids. So I'd
Yeah.
stop off at my local pub that people knew me. I could sit at the bar, still have conversations with people. If I had to, I could walk home. So it was close enough. I
Mhm.
mean, I'd still kind of put in my mind that, because I didn't want to drink and drive and all those things. So I'd have a drink or two and stretch it out. But then I'd go home and I would drink by myself.
Did you feel
Because
yourself like also getting in a pit of depression, or were you just so caught up in this new cycle that you were in that you didn't have time to feel depressed, or do you think it led to some type of downness?
um, I can honestly say I felt profound sadness. I felt profound sadness about one, our family breaking up, and not being with my kids. Like,
Yeah.
I am, and sometimes my girls are like, "Yeah, mom, okay, yeah, we know you love us," but
Mhm.
I I don't know for me if I'd label it depression. I honestly can't. I wouldn't label it that. I would label, if I had to give it a label, profound sadness, and I would use it to just allow myself not to think about anything. Like,
Yeah.
and then sometimes, to think, oh, I need it to fall asleep. Where now, I
Yeah.
mean, once you figure things out, you figure out lots of healthier coping mechanisms. But if I'm
Right.
really looking back to where it started, and then it would fluctuate. So it would really, it's not like, since 2011 that I've been drinking a bottle two or a day. So I'd have periods of time where I would drink a lot less. But if you ask me to assess it, I would probably say at least 3-4 years before. So I stopped in 2020. And before that,
Mhm.
like, I did not want to address it, Lino. I didn't, like, I really wanted to act like my wine drinking was fine.
Mhm.
And that the one person that challenged me on it was my mom.
Oh wow.
Nobody
How
else
did she
challenged me.
how did she challenge you?
Well, because at the time in 2019, my mom, who was in her 80s at the time and was physically healthy, just had some mobility issues, like she might fall and things like that. So at the time she had moved in with my oldest sister. We do have a big family, and we always say to each other that, none of us are going to a home. We're all going to live with somebody. And so when my mom couldn't live in her own home, we just kept saying, okay, mom, who are you going to live with? And my given name is Sandra, even though I go by Sam. So my sister would say, you get to choose me or Sandra. Those are your options. Where are you going to, anyway? So my mom moved to the farm with my sister and their family, and I was staying there for a while. And um, I would, and I laugh because I think, what was I thinking? You know, but I would buy these boxes of wine and have them at my sister's farm. And let's face it, my sister, her husband, my niece, they have a farm and cattle and everything, and they don't drink. They just don't drink.
Yeah.
So I would kind of make a joke about me and my wine, and, oh, I just need my wine every now and then. but I would have this little box because I had to switch to the box, Lino. Because if I
You mean
drank a
the
bottle,
the box that has a little?
yep.
Oh wow.
Well, imagine it, because if I drank a bottle, they could tell that the bottle was gone.
Right.
But if I had the box, then I could take some wine. But my mom was like, how much wine are you drinking? And
Well,
I'd be
she
like,
caught on
oh
right away,
no,
huh?
oh yeah. Like my mom was like, what are you doing? And of course I'd be like, oh, I'm fine. But I'm not fine when I have to hide wine in a teacup.
Right.
Like that's not fine.
And she
So my
noticed that, huh?
yeah. So my mom was like, I think you're drinking too much. Then of course, anyone that is, you don't want anybody to tell you that.
No, you don't. No, you don't. So then when, so okay, hold up. So you stopped drinking in 2020. Isn't that like right when the pandemic was
Yeah.
hitting?
Yeah.
Wow, I would, that sounds like it'd be even more challenging because you're stuck at home.
Well, here's how it happened. So my oldest daughter was pregnant at the time with my grandson. And I had been in Mexico, and I was coming back from Mexico and going straight to my daughter. She actually lived in a different town at the time, a different city from me. And she said, Mom, you're going to be here when the baby is born. And I said, yeah, as soon as that plane lands down, I'm coming to stay with you. So that was the end of February of 2020. And my grandson was born 1st of March. And
Wow.
then we got locked down. So I'm staying with my daughter and her boyfriend at the time. And Lena, I just started right back into it. I'm drinking. I got the boxes of wine and we're shut down and I'm drinking. And I don't mean to sound like I'm laughing about it and it's funny and everything. Like the part of my coping is looking at the absurdity of how I justified everything until I really got real with myself. So
Yeah.
I take this very seriously. I guess just part of my coping is just really looking back at that time. And I'm remembering again, at my daughter's, I'm drinking how much wine. And I remember saying to my daughter, like, oh, I'm going to quit drinking this week. And the eye roll, you can imagine, a 22-year-old, like eye roll going, okay, Mom. And I looked at her and I said, what do you mean? And she goes, nothing. And she goes, you're fine. You don't act crazy. You just act a little bit silly. You drink too much and you go to bed. And then I was like, whoa, like that's kind of my identity.
Wow.
And the turning point, Lino, and I tell this story over and over. So if anyone is hearing me on my show or hearing me on different shows, they're going to be like, oh my gosh, here she goes,
Well,
but,
I haven't heard it.
But my heart, Lino, like here I am, like my kids are my life. And here I have my brand new grandson. And my daughter said to me, Mom, can we leave the baby with you and can we go out for, a couple I'm like, sure. So I remember thinking,
Oh, wow.
I'm not going to drink tonight. I remember thinking, if I'm going to be with the baby, I'm going to be totally sober. I'm not going to, and I mean, I've raised 3 kids and I could, do it with one arm behind my back and all that, but I just really wanted to be fully present.
Right.
So I'm holding this baby. I'm looking at him, he is sleeping. And if you have ever held a newborn baby and they're sleeping and like, and you just look at that face.
That's trusting you 100%.
Yeah. And Lino, when you talk about God moments, the thought I had looking at him was, okay, do you want to raise and not raise, but do you want him to grow up? Do you want him to grow up with a Nana with a wine glass in her hand that's half drunk all the time? Or do you want him to grow up with a Nana that is there for him, that spends time with him, that can pick him up anytime? Like just, it was that moment where I was like, okay, you can have this or this. And I just said to myself, like, I've got to do this. And it took me till July. So March to July of, not drinking. I'd go 10 days, I'd go 30 days. And then the July 1st was waking up after like drinking copious amounts of wine the night before and I woke up that day and went, when is enough going to be enough? Kind
Yeah.
of like, okay. And so from July 1st of 2020 till now, it was just my turning point. So not only how I felt, but my grandson was my turning point.
That's beautiful. So it was actually July 1st. That was the last time you took a drink, or that was your day that sobriety started?
June 30th. June 30th was the last night that, again, we fool ourselves, those of us that can't have just one drink.
Right.
So again, I hadn't drank for a while, but I was going out to visit some people, and she drank the same wine that I drank. And I was like, oh, I'll just have one glass. This is what we tell ourselves.
Right.
And I probably drank a bottle and a half by myself. And I hadn't eaten much the day before. And when I start drinking wine, I just don't feel like eating. So you can imagine I hadn't drank for a while. And then I wake up July 1st feeling more horrible than I've felt in months. And that was my, I remember opening my eyes and going like, are you done? For me.
Yeah.
And I can't speak for anyone else. Like so many times, some people will say to me, oh, well, sometimes I've gone through that. And I'm not judging anybody else or telling anybody else. I'm just saying my story of I was feeling like that too many days of the week.
Yeah.
And I just couldn't anymore.
Did you face any other things? Did you face yourself with any other things such as spirituality or trying to figure out what was causing you to continue to binge drink? Or was it just one of these things where you were like, I got to stop and that's it? And then you started finding spirituality afterwards?
No, I have been spiritual 20, 30, like my whole life.
Oh, okay.
And I think for me, that's why I just kept justifying the wine. I was like, well, I meditate every day. I pray. I do all the spiritual things. I teach people how to eat healthy. I'm healthy. I walk every day. I do yoga. Like, because I had so many of the healthy practices in place, I just kept saying to myself, well, it's okay that you drink wine. Again, these were the lies that I told myself. I would say after I stopped, just the spiritual connections and the spiritual revelations just got stronger. Just they weren't clouded by that alcohol brain.
Yeah. And how did they get stronger?
Well, one, I think without the alcohol in my brain anymore, I just got clearer, and I could tune in. I could actually hear and trust spirit, so to speak, versus in my wine haze, there's a lot of things that I missed, or I tried to control it.
Right.
Where when you finally, the saying, let go and let God.
Ooh, I like
when
that.
You finally let go.
Yeah.
I think
then you were able to let God after that.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
And so then you became a sobriety coach, a speaker, and a podcaster. How did that line up? When did that line up?
Well, I've been speaking for quite a while. I just have changed my focus to speak more about sobriety.
Okay.
Because before Sober and Serene, for years I had a brand that's called Love Brand You. So that was, even when I decided that, oh, maybe I'll start speaking about sobriety. And this is where, this is a good example for listening to spirit. So I had a podcast at one point called Love Brand You. I had an online show called Love Brand You, where I talked about metaphysics and faith and health and nutrition and different topics. And I didn't talk about sobriety at the beginning. For me personally, even though I wasn't trying to hide it, I wasn't trying to hide it. But in 2020, because we were all shut down, nobody really knew about it. I mean, my
Yeah.
family kind of did. And I would say, oh, I'm not drinking. And again, friends and family, like they love us, but it's kind of like, yeah, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
It
Right.
really is. So I kept working on my sobriety behind the scenes, but I didn't really bring it into my business because I didn't know if I wanted to talk about it, because for so long it had been behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So again, in my prayers, and because I pray daily, meditate, all of this stuff. I said, okay, God, I need for me, and I'm always about numbers and timeline, and I work these things out in my head. And so I said, okay, God, if I hit 2 years, because before that, Lino, I wasn't sure that I was never going to stop drinking wine.
Oh, wow.
Because in the back of my head, I still thought, you know what, I'm learning so much, and I like maybe, because you kind of grieve something that like I was so connected to that bottle of Sauvignon Blanc every day to let that go.
Wow. So you
So
went
a
through a
part of me,
grieving stage when you became sober.
yeah, yeah. So part of me was like, well, maybe I can still drink. So there's this romanticizing in my head, I like to say. So I made a deal with God. I said, okay, God, if I hit 2 years and I still haven't drank, then I will start to talk about it. Like I'll really talk,
Uh-huh.
because if you talk about it publicly,
Then
how
you have
can,
to own
how,
it.
exactly. So
Yeah.
even though some of my friends and family knew about it, I was still fairly quiet behind the scenes. So
Yeah.
come I think earlier this year, so we're in 2022, so we're coming up on 2 years. So here I am, I'm working on Love Brand You, and I'm doing all of my Love Brand You stuff, which is still, some health coaching, some business coaching. I had my online show for Love Brand You, and I was trying to make a segue about sobriety in Love Brand You. So I'm having this conversation with God, and I'm like, it's not working. Like I can't make it work. And God was like, well, you're not supposed to. And you have to understand, like now that
Yeah.
like I just have these conversations in my head.
So do I.
So like it's
I'm the same
me and
way.
it's God.
I'm the same
And
way.
it's like you can't, like, well, obviously that's not going to work. So without a word of a lie, I'm probably sitting in this same chair because I spend a lot of time on my computer and everything. And it would have been sometime in June. And I literally went, well, tell me what I'm supposed to do, in my head.
Yes.
It's sober and serene.
Those are the words
And
you heard?
yeah.
Oh, wow. And I love it too.
And
Sober
I
and
went,
serene.
really? Okay. So I said, you mean I have to do something different, that I can't, I was trying to still have my umbrella for Love Brand You and just kind of make an addendum with the sober stuff.
Yeah.
And it was like, no, and then I'm having this conversation with God, and I'm like, okay, well, do I have to give up Love Brand You? No, you can do whatever you want, park it, do what, like, but you said you were going to focus in July onward about Sober and Serene. So I went and checked, is the domain available? Yes, it is. So I literally sat that day and just started creating a different website, a different mission, a different started talking to a couple of my colleagues that have a sober story, and I said, okay, I'm going for it. And I said I'm going to do a YouTube podcast, because I knew if I didn't just go, I knew if I just didn't, okay, I gotta go, I knew if I stepped back and really waited a moment, I might chicken out.
Yeah. You had to do it right then and there.
Yeah. So I started my podcast the middle of July online, and like I do this on YouTube, and I talk to somebody every week about their sober story, and we put it out there. And now I'm talking every week, and in any groups I'm in, hey, let's talk sobriety, let's talk recovery. And it's been amazing.
That is amazing. And congratulations.
Thank you.
So, Sam, now that the 2 years have passed and then you were going to allow yourself those 2 years, have you given it any thought at all? Or are you just like, I'm done for good, or does it ever creep back in?
Oh, you know what? Um, Short answer, no. I'm 99.999 that I wouldn't pick up a glass of wine. I would, and I
Right.
say that because it's not like I didn't drink anything else. But
Yeah.
for me, any other alcohol could be sitting there and I'd be like, oh, take it or leave it.
Hmm.
But for me, there was something about wine that if wine's around, I'm gonna drink it.
Yeah.
It it's just, but now no. And I rarely think about it, Lino. Honestly, and if I do, it's only a fleeting second to go, wow, my life is way too good that, why would I go that route? And now I've created my livelihood around it. Like how, what's the word I'm looking for? Um, it just wouldn't make sense.
Right.
Hypocritical. I'd be so
Yeah.
hypocritical if I've got this brand sober and serene, and then over here I'm like, oh, I'm just going for a glass of wine tonight.
Hmm. Sam, what do you think is important for people to know about sobriety?
Um, that there are many paths to sobriety.
Ooh, I
There
like
is
that.
not
I like that.
one path. And people often
There
ask
is
me,
not one right path.
yes, exactly. And people ask me, did you go to AA? What did you do? And for me, because we were in the pandemic, I knew I had to do lots online and I knew I had to figure it out my own way. And I'm partly like that. That's partly my personality that like I did join a couple of support groups, but it's partly my personality that I want to figure this out.
Hmm.
I want to and I did look at AA. I've looked at Smart Recovery, and there's a few of them that every path has has so many good aspects to it.
Yeah, definitely.
But for me, because most of my work has always been habit based, even with nutrition, with my clients, I don't subscribe to a certain diet. We look at your lifestyle and then we work what needs to happen around your lifestyle. So I took the same approach with sobriety. So I couldn't drink. So you have to not only stop the behavior, but you have to replace it with something. So
Yes.
I I
Yes.
I pretty much at the beginning, I just walked because
Hmm.
that's what I could do. I could get up and walk. That my daughter has a dog, so I'd be like, okay, dog and me are going for a walk
Yeah.
because everything triggered me at the beginning for wine. And when I was at home, even with them, I could drink any time of the day if I wanted.
Yeah.
My 5 o'clock wine o'clock at the beginning started at 3 o'clock because I could.
Hmm.
So for the first bit when I was staying with my daughter, those first couple of months before I really got serious about stopping, I was starting to drink at 3 o'clock in the afternoon because why not?
Right. Because you could.
Yeah. So after
So,
that, I just, instead of drinking, I just went out walking.
Sam, which is very healthy.
Yeah.
I love walking. Sam,
Yeah.
so
Me too.
once you actually hit sobriety, did all your other, I mean, did your holistic eating and did your, I mean, because you said that you actually had a little more clarity with like your spirituality and being able to hear God. Did the same thing happen with like holistic, your nutrition and other areas in your life?
Um, I think what I realized is because I justified my wine, because I thought I had all these healthy habits. Once I gave up wine, I really realized that in a lot of ways, I wasn't as healthy as I thought.
Yeah.
So my, even though I eat fairly healthy most of the time, still when you know how some people want to eat more when something happens. For
Right.
me, I'm the opposite. When I'm anxious, when I was drinking, when I'm upset, anything, I don't eat.
Mhm.
Like I just, so the more I drank, if I hadn't ate
Yeah, the
healthy,
less you would eat. Yeah,
that's
wow.
right.
And so
So,
your only nutrition was alcohol.
oh yeah.
Oh man.
So I'd try to make
Wow.
sure I'd eat early in the day. I'd be like, okay, and I love eggs, so I'd have my eggs in the morning, or I'd try to eat, get some vegetables and fruit in and some healthy proteins. But the moment I started drinking, I could often go all evening without eating anything more.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, did I get healthier after that? You bet. And I never craved sugar until I gave up the wine,
Oh,
because
yeah, that happens.
I wasn't getting the sugar from the wine.
Right.
So there was a lot of things I had to adapt. And yeah,
Well, it sounds like an incredible journey, and I'm really
and
happy
sleep,
to see where you're at
sleep.
now. Oh, yeah,
That
definitely.
was
Well,
that
so before you
people.
were drinking to sleep, and then now, did you go through a period of not being able to sleep?
Well, you know what happens when you're drinking, and loosely, what happens is and for me, I would wake up around 2 or 3 in the morning every night. And for the simplest way I can talk about it is, like, if you hear of Chinese medicine, or any of those types of modalities that look at what's happening to your body processes.
Yes.
So your body does so many things, rest and recuperation while you're sleeping, and it
Mm,
goes, and in layman's terms, it goes through your body, and it's trying to rest and repair and recover all your
right.
different systems. Well, around 2 or 3 in the morning is when your liver is trying to do the detoxing and
Oh,
do its work.
whoa. I
So
didn't know
if
that.
you put it together, every night my liver is talking to me saying, like, hey, like, what are you doing to me?
Wow.
And even I knew that, Lino, I knew that. But again, like, I kept thinking, oh, well, I take my supplements, I have my healthy, like, and this is what I mean, that it was so ridiculous, the stories I told myself.
Yeah.
So after I quit, between the health effects of not drinking, and I started a really solid sleep routine. I was like, okay, I'm not drinking now. I need to have a solid sleep because I need to repair my body. And so, I'd have a wind down yoga routine. I'd meditate. I'd make sure, that I was going to bed in a restful state. And Lino, I sleep from the time I go to sleep. I do not wake up until, like, I set my internal alarm every night. I don't wake up with any alarm. I just say when I go to sleep, okay, God, I got to get up at 5 tomorrow. And I'll be aware, or okay, this morning I got to get up at 6. And
Yeah, because you're setting the intention,
yep,
and you're healthy now. So
yeah.
your
And I
your mind,
sleep.
body, and spirit are
Yep,
connected.
yeah. And I sleep soundly. I have the best sleep. Oh, and oh my goodness, like, your skin get, like, I used to be very bloated, very, like, to
Flushy.
so many bodily, like, what that much alcohol does to your body.
Oh, yeah,
But yeah,
definitely.
so
Hey, Sam, if you
it
can
is
go
amazing.
back to yourself when you were in the middle of being an alcoholic, if you can go back to that timeline, being who you are today now, what would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself to, like, to listen, to listen to the signs. I kept ignoring the signs. I didn't reach out at the beginning when I went through my divorce. I was too proud to reach out for help. I tried to do way too much on my own. I would say to myself at that time to reach out for help, whether it would have been a support group or somebody, even just to talk about what I was going through.
Yeah.
So that would be it for sure, to reach out. And then as I was going along, um, probably, yeah, mostly just to really stop ignoring myself.
I love that. Thank you, Sam. Well,
Thank you.
thank you so much for opening up and telling us your story. This has been really amazing. How can our viewers, our watchers, and our listeners find you and your podcast and your coaching business if anybody needs help or needs any advice?
Everything can be found at soberandserene.com, or for my YouTube podcast, it's also Sober and Serene, and everything, all the links can be found there, Lino.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being on the Little Less Beer podcast. This has been amazing. It's so nice to meet you, Sam. and keep going, keep inspiring people.
Thank you.
I'll bring them your way, especially if I come across some sober people. I'll definitely bring them over onto your podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Sam.
Okay.